welcome to another members only video. Thank you for being here, for supporting me through the membership options. So as I have mentioned in the community post, this is going to be about how influences on the second house of the Dasamsa chart, which is the career chart, which is ruled by the Karaka of Saturn. How energies around the second house will show the best sources of income. And in fact, a lot of the times, as far as I have noticed, they might even show the only ways that you can make money. Again, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to go through, specific examples. Maybe I will at some point in the future, but for now, I'm just going to give you the general theory, the things you want to look for. So depending on which planet, which energy is sitting there, all right, you might have different options. So if you have sun influence, let's say, on the second house of the Dasamsa, right? So you have the second house in Leo, you have sun in the second house, you have sun in the 8th house, because then it is looking at the second house. Or if, let's say, the lord of the second house is conjunct the sun or opposite the sun, because then it is aspected. To some extent, you also want to look at the sign interchangement situation. So let's say if you have sun in Taurus, let's say the second house is ruled by Venus, right? And you have Venus in Leo, and then you have sun in Taurus. This means that there's a sign interchange between Venus and the sun, right? Because the sign that Venus rules is governed by, the sun is falling in the sign that Venus rules and vice versa. So Venus is falling in the sign that the sun rules. This is similar to a conjunction, and according to some traditional astrologers, it's even stronger than a conjunction, but not my personal opinion, okay? I wouldn't say that it's stronger than a conjunction, but it's still worth looking at. So if you have this sign interchangement in the Dasamsa, the D10 divisional chart, then you would also take this into account, right? So if you have the sun energy, right, it shows that you're going to make money through leadership positions, administrative positions, working with the government, any kind of creative profession, any kind of profession where you are at the forefront of something, maybe being like a leader, maybe even in politics, but it can be anything where, again, management, administration to some extent, anything involving fire or creativity, right? So heating, maybe cooking or something, or working with weapons. Again, a lot would have to be determined ultimately by the full picture and what else is going on in the Dasamsa and the rest of the horoscope. Aside from that, if you have moon, let's say, influencing the second house, you have moon in the second house lord conjunct the moon, or any of the other previous scenarios that I mentioned. It means that you could make money from working with women, especially mothers, like working on anything to do with maternity, positions where you will be as a kind of a nurturer, you help people, humanitarian causes, working with people who are underprivileged. You could be making money through working with fluids, maybe the beverage industry as well, especially if you also have some Rahu going on there. You could be making money from import-export, anything that involves travel, especially maritime travel, or, something to do with sea travel, but not necessarily any kind of travel. Travel is connected to the moon because the moon waxes and wanes, so it's pretty inconstant like that. Also, you could be working in your mother's profession or working with your mother. That's really specific. Obviously, not everyone who has this placement will be making money like that. Any kind of career where you are in your head a lot, like you have to imagine things, like a writer, for instance, or a composer, working with music as well. But again, for these more specific things, you would have to have supportive aspects, right? Also, of course, real estate could also be connected to restaurant business, actual food, like any kind of position where you're nourishing people, especially with the second house also being connected to food sometimes. Aside from that, let me think if there are any other potential careers. I mean, I'm sure that there are loads of potential careers, especially nowadays when we have so much of a diverse, world, and so many different working environments and jobs available. Yeah. So basically anything involving the imagination would be good for the moon actually, and or working with women or working with your emotions, like, something where you're creative, where you rely on empathy a lot. So like being a therapist, for instance, could be a thing. Aside from that, if you have Mercury connected to the second house, it's very important for you to communicate when you are working. So any kind of, like, again, bear in mind that these are still very isolated descriptions. So they don't actually give you like overall career trajectories, because a lot has to be seen from the full horoscope. But if you do have Mercury, generally you will find yourself making money from positions where you have to communicate a lot, whether it's talking, whether it's writing, maybe even, I don't know, through social media or something. You will have to somehow use your communication skills in order to make money. Mercury can also be connected to business, any kind of business, or having multiple streams of income. So it supports that, like maybe having, I don't know, a side hustle, having two jobs, stuff like that could be supported by Mercury. Any kind of like business, like it's actually ruling business, Also working with your hands. So like doing crafts, arts, something with your hands, maybe playing an instrument, but again, you would have to see more supportive aspects for stuff that is more specific. Aside from Mercury, another thing could be breath work. Again, more specific, you would have to see supportive aspects. But if someone, let's say, has other aspects that shows inclination towards yoga, Mercury in the second house could show you could make money through teaching meditation or breathing techniques, stuff like that, because Mercury rules the lungs and the respiratory system. Aside from that, if you have Venus connected to the second house, could be working with women, especially young women who are not mothers, working with the fashion industry, the beauty industry, anything connected to beauty, arts, stuff like that. Even if it's not like literally directly working with these things, you could be in a position where you are having to be like some kind of a pacifist. That's another thing, because Venus is about diplomacy. It rules Libra. So being a negotiator, a pacifist, a peacemaker, a healer, any kind of medical profession would be favored by this as well. Working in the sweets business, so everything that has to do with, delighting the five senses is connected to Venus. Working directly with money is another one that could be strongly connected to Venus. So like banking, stuff like that. So anything, I said, anything to do with beauty, jewelry, sweets, I don't know, the fashion industry, creating curtains, beautifying, decorating. Also a lot of creative professions, yes, but especially things that have to do with sensuality and hedonism. And if you have Mars aspecting the second, very strong position for someone who uses their body a lot to work. So it could be someone who's into sports or just has a job that is physically demanding where they have to use their body a lot. So generally with Mars in the second house, for instance, I don't think it would be a good idea to focus on working remotely, for instance. Someone with this position has to be kind of hands-on about their work. They could also particularly be drawn to challenging positions where they have to deal with crisis situations, working with military, police, weapons, defense, stuff like that. But usually stuff that is hands-on, that is practical, could also be connected to engineering or anything to do with the physical body, like being a surgeon. Everything that is kind of like mechanical, stuff like that. Things that have to do with cutting, using instruments, metallic instruments. Again, very Mars dominated. Aside from that, if you have, let's say, Jupiter aspecting the second house, it means teaching. Anything to do with teaching, maybe publishing, religion as well. Like with the Jupiter in the second house, you could see these like gurus, mentors, sort of people that can easily make money from, I don't know, maybe being like a life coach, for instance, would be good for Jupiter in the second house, basically teaching in any forms. Also working with children to some extent could be good with Jupiter because it is the signifier of children. And things like philosophy, religion, like I said. Maybe also things to do with animals and traveling, especially like things that have to do with the outdoors, like hiking and stuff. If you have Saturn connected to the second house, this could show a person who needs to really work hard to make their money, to be honest. Saturn in the second house will also show that you are suited for administrative positions, anything that basically takes a long time to develop, like slow and steady wins the race. And also could be working night shifts, could be working at night, could be working with material resources, natural resources, and administration again. Could be working with, like, being in a position where you are kind of a servant in a way, like you're serving others. So Saturn in the second house, again, depending on what else is going on, but it would tend to indicate someone who's better off being an employee generally, unless there's a lot of indicators somewhere else in the horoscope that they're meant to have a business. If you have Rahu in the second house, or Rahu connected to the second house, this could show a person who is meant to work with foreigners. Like, you will often end up, like, no matter what, you will end up having to work with foreigners, people from different backgrounds, in order to make money using technology. Like, no matter what line of work you are in, you're constantly going to have to be using technology to make money with this Rahu. Also could be suited towards unconventional careers, like even an astrologer, a tarot reader, stuff like that. With Ketu on the second house, this is a very spiritual position, and this is a placement where a lot of the times you may not even have the interest to make money, because Ketu seeks to detach from everything that it touches. So in order to actually make money, you have to take a very spiritual approach. So, like, sometimes you'll have to work with, very subtle themes, things that are very mysterious and subtle, like energy work. Again, astrologers could be a thing, anything that is kind of esoteric. Aside from that, could also literally be working with electricians, with wires, working with electricity, especially like small electrical devices, like even laptops and stuff like that. That could be Ketu. And anything that has to do with like the supernatural, honestly, pretty much with Ketu. Spiritual, like I said. And also like things to do with maybe microscopes and stuff like that. Yeah, this is pretty much what I have for you, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. And if you have, don't forget to like, and also if you have any feedback or things that might help that you want to discuss, don't be shy, and please comment in the comment section. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you once again for being a member, and I hope to see you at my next video.